Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 31. Bow your head and apologize. This woman could only be 18 or 19 years old at most, yet she had already reached element gathering tier. But how was it possible that a strong warrior of element gathering tier would actually spout nonsense? Hang Zan was shocked for a moment, before quickly giving a humph in his heart. So what if she was at element gathering tier? At this age, she could only have just broken through. How would it be possible that she could oppose Elder Yu? Elder Yu, take her down. The lust in Hang Zhan's heart was fully active. Being a cultivator in the body refining tier, to be able to hold down a master in the element gathering tier underneath his body and toy with her, his sense of fulfillment would be overwhelmingly strong, particularly when this girl was of such exquisite beauty. He was very close to being unable to hold himself back. Although Elder Yu had a cautious expression on his face, he too did not think of Lu Yutong as a powerful enemy. After all, the girl was much too young. According to his mindset, the girl may be in the first or second layer in element gathering tier, maybe the third layer, at most. He was someone in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Although it was not possible for him to break through to the gushing spring tier in this lifetime, but on the plane of element gathering tier, he found few who could actually battle against him on even footing. Young miss, surrender obediently to avoid suffering later, he spoke up. Killing intent flashed through Lu Yutong's eyes. She was the princess of the Lu clan. In front of the 8 great clans of the imperial city, what did a mere stone wolf sect count as? This Hang Zhan actually dared to bear evil intentions towards her. It seemed like he really was seeking death. But when her current position came to mind, she could not help turning to look at Ling Han, a questioning look on her face. Ling Han gave a shrug, and said, "This kind of bastard, if you want to kill him, then go ahead." Lu Yutong turned back around, and the powerful aura of the 9th layer of element gathering tier was released without any reservations. It rivaled Elder Yu's aura, and showed no signs of losing. What? Elder Yu quickly paled, breathing out in shock. 9th layer of element gathering tier, how is this possible? 9th layer of element gathering tier. Elder Yu was not the only one to be greatly shocked. Even Lu Dong and his group were flabbergasted, their facial muscles twitching in shock. Let alone reaching the 9th layer of element gathering tier, for someone below 20 years old to achieve element gathering tier was already shocking enough. Lu Dong and his friends had originally thought that even if there was a gap between themselves and Lu Yutong, this gap wouldn't be too far, because they too had already achieved the 8th and 9th layers of body refining tier respectively, and so were only one step away from breaking through to element gathering tier. But the 9th layer of element gathering tier, that was a kind of power they only dared to ponder about as something they would only be able to face at least 8, or maybe even 10 years later. Elder Yu immediately clasped his fists in a polite gesture, and said, "Please excuse my young master's previous impoliteness, young miss. I hereby apologize on behalf of my young master." Although both of them were in the 9th layer of element gathering tier and he thought that he would not lose against this young woman, the problem was that his opponent had already reached the 9th layer of element gathering tier at such a young age, and this was not something that could be done with the support of any ordinary party. In other words, it was her background Elder Yu was scared of. Although Hang Zhan felt upset, and was unwilling to give up, there was nothing he could do. Even if he was an extremely haughty, arrogant man, he wasn't an idiot. He knew that there were some people that he could trifle with, and there were some people that he definitely should not even think of messing with. Lu Yutong belonged to the category of those he definitely should not even think of messing with. Lu Yutong only gave a wave of her hands, and said stiffly, "I won't kill you. Get out of my way." What a joke. How could anyone think of committing blasphemy against the princess of the Lu clan and live? "Miss, don't go too far," Elder Yu said in a deep voice. Naturally, he would not just stand aside and watch Hang Zhan die. Lu Yutong did not answer. She raised her hands in an offensive stance. Yellow-grade high-level martial arts skill, snapping of the plum hands. Seeing this, Elder Yu knew that this matter could not be peacefully settled, so raised his hands as well, forming claws. Yellow-grade medium-level martial arts skill, flying eagle claws. Lu Dong declared. He was best at claw skills, and so knew the characteristics of many different skills belonging to that class. With one glance, he managed to identify Elder Yu's claw skill. "Ling Han, will that one from your family have any problems?" The 5 of them had already gathered around Ling Han. Lu Yutong was now their only ray of hope. Ling Han smiled softly, and said, she should not. Should not. Lu Dong and his companions were all unsettled. Should not sounded very dubious, but both of the fighters were in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so really, who could actually say with certainty which one of them would emerge victorious? While they had been conversing, Lu Yutong had already moved, and was now in a fierce battle with Elder Yu. The 2 of them exchanged blows, their figures moving like wind extremely quick. The 2 fighters were both masters in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Lu Dong and his group couldn't clearly see their movements or judge the actual situation. They only felt the blurring of their sight, and had completely no idea who was winning. Hang Zhan naturally couldn't see clearly either. He couldn't help feeling extremely anxious, for if Elder Yu was defeated, he would definitely lose his life as well. So, of course he was worried. But after the battle had lasted for about 3 to 5 minutes, the movements of the 2 fighters had slowed down, not only to the point that Lu Dong and his group could all see very clearly, but also to the point that even they thought that the pace of the battle had become much too slow. However, a hint of prudence appeared on Ling Han's face. Slow did not mean that the 2 fighters were going easy on their attacks. On the contrary, the situation now was even more dangerous, for they had already entered a life or death stage. Should either of the 2 of them make even a small, tiny mistake, the result would not just be defeat, but death. He recalled that these few days, whenever he was free, he would be guiding Lu Yutong. Based on his previous cultivation of heaven tier, whatever little bit of experience he managed to pass on to a lower-level martial artist would be extremely precious. As long as she had truly absorbed his teachings, there would definitely be a monumental increase in her power. With Lu Yutong's level of comprehension, he believed that she should have understood much of what he had been teaching her. This battle, she should be able to win. Lu Yutong and Elder Yu's battle slowed down even further. One of them was an old master in the element gathering tier who had been at this stage for a very long time, and thus had extremely vast battle experience. Meanwhile, though the other was young, she was a martial arts genius and had a very high level of comprehension. Moreover, she had also benefited much from Ling Han's guidance, and was shockingly powerful in battle. Elder Yu's forehead was already heavily beaded with cold sweat. His opponent was too strong. He felt the oncoming pressure of death, but he dared not be distracted at this moment, not even to surrender and beg for mercy. If he dared pause, he would definitely suffer Lu Yutong's wrathful strike. Lu Yutong, on the other hand, was becoming more and more serene. She was already completely on the winning side. The situation was now extremely clear. Even Lu Dong and his group could see clearly that Lu Yutong was winning, so they smiled for they saw their worries dissipate. Since they could see clearly, Hang Zhan naturally could see clearly too. He could not help stepping back and retreating, preparing to escape at the first opportunity. You're in such a rush, where are you headed to? Ling Han flew forwards like an arrow shot from a bow, blocking his way. Get out of my way! Hang Zhan shouted loudly, I'm from the Stone Wolf Sect, and you dare to trifle with me? I'll slaughter your whole family. How overbearing! Ling Han drew his sword, his gaze filled with murderous intent. There was nothing worth saying to such a man. The best thing would be to immediately kill him. Ling Han, don't be impulsive. Lu Dong could not help shouting out. Should Hang Zhan be killed, none of their clans would be able to withstand the furious rage of the Stone Wolf Sect. Ha ha, listen to your companion's advice, and never oppose me. Otherwise, nothing but death awaits you. Hang Zhan laughed coldly, you're fortunate today. He was just about ready to run away and escape. However, he had not yet managed to move from his place when he felt a cool sensation on his neck. A long sword was already pressed against it, immediately causing his whole body to shiver. He felt as if he was almost going to urinate out of fear. There is no one that I dare not kill, Ling Han said calmly, and his voice turned cold. Kneel. Hang Zhan did not dare refuse. The freezing cold eyes of the man in front of him caused him to feel a cutting chill. This was clearly a man of his word. Apologize, Ling Han continued to say. Hang Zan immediately felt the urge to stand up and spit out curses, but as he felt the freezing sensation upon his neck, he could only bow his head while thinking that as soon as he got back to the Stone Wolf sect, he would definitely have his grandfather personally come to kill all these guys in front of him. Of course, the two beautiful girls would be spared and become his toys instead. "I was wrong, I'm inhumane," he said, begging for mercy. "I hope you will become a good person in your next life," Ling Han said coolly. No, Hang Zan immediately sensed the situation was taking a turn for the worse, but he only felt a sharp pain on his neck as his sight suddenly turned dark. Fresh blood spurted out, causing his eyes to go wide in disbelief. Ling Han actually dared to kill him. At the same moment, Lu Yutong gave a soft cry with a pat of her small hands. It was as if Elder Yu had turned into stone, showing no signs of movement at all. After a long while, his body finally collapsed onto the ground. "This is going to be a huge catastrophe," Lu Dong and the rest sighed in unison. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 32. Breaking Through to Element Gathering Tier. Ling Han withdrew his sword and said, smiling, "Will you tell anyone of what has happened here today?" "Of course not." Lu Dong and the rest quickly shook their heads. "It's all right, then. None of us present here will say anything, so who would find out that Hang Zan and his lackey died here?" Ling Han said. However, Lu Dong and his companions were still unable to let go of their worries. After all, the name of Stone Wolf Sect was much too intimidating. Based on its power, the sect could easily eliminate their respective clans 100 times. With such feelings, they dared not linger here for too long, fearing that Ling Han would kill them too to ensure their silence. Moreover, they each possessed a green spiritual fruit in their hands, adding on to the unsettled feelings in their hearts. They soon bid farewell to Ling Han and set off, quickly disappearing from his sight. Killing the eyewitnesses, Ling Han naturally had no such plan, for his little female attendant was the princess of the Lu clan of the imperial city. Against such a noble existence, what did an insignificant Hang Zan count as? If the Stone Wolf sect found out that Hang Zan actually dared to bear evil intentions towards Lu Yutong, they might even personally behead Hang Zan as an apology. Just as how Lu Dong and his group felt immeasurable fear towards Stone Wolf sect, what did an insignificant Stone Wolf sect count as in the eyes of the 8 great clans? "I'll take one green spiritual fruit first. Once I reach the peak of the 9th layer of body refining tier, I'll take the second one," Ling Han thought. Although he had already walked through all the 9 tiers on his way from the body refining tier all the way to the heaven tier, this did not imply that he could easily step over the gulf between the 2 tiers. That was because, aside from the comprehension and understanding accumulated within a given tier, breaking through the bottlenecks between tiers was an endeavor that required a vast amount of energy to support it. Where did this energy came from? Spiritual medicine, alchemical pills, treasures obtained from demonic beasts, spiritual fluids found in nature could all be used as the source of this energy. Unfortunately, these materials were extremely rare and hard to find. This was the reason why the higher the tier, the fewer martial artists there were that could achieve it. Without these kinds of supporting materials to provide the additional energy for martial artists to break through to a higher tier, the only thing they could do was depend on themselves to slowly accumulate the energy required for the breakthrough. Some would be able to succeed in breaking through, while some may cause themselves to explode from overaccumulation of energy. If he had not had the green spiritual fruit, Ling Han may have needed to accumulate about 10+ days worth of origin power to reach the peak of the 9th layer of body refining tier, and then break through to the element gathering tier in a spurt of energy. But things were different now. When he reached the barrier between body refining and element gathering tier, Ling Han only needed to take the green spiritual fruit, and it would be smooth sailing all the way. Ling Han liberated all the valuables from the bodies of Hang Zan and Elder Yu. Because the two of them had been on a journey, they obviously had not kept too many valuables on them, so all he managed to find were some money and a book on some secret martial art. The sum of money came up to a total of about 100,000 coins, which could not be considered a small sum. Meanwhile, the book was titled Detonation Arts, and it was a rather unique skill. Basically, it allowed a martial artist to inject his origin power into something which would cause the item to detonate. It would be difficult for someone to defend against such a skill. Elder Yu should have just obtained this secret arts manual and had yet to start mastering it. Otherwise, if Lu Yutong had been surprised with such an attack in the midst of battle, then she would definitely have suffered quite a bit. The two of them moved to a new location. After all, there were 2 dead bodies in their previous location. Just looking at the 2 corpses would spoil their mood. Ling Han sat down in a cross-legged position. He then took out a green spiritual fruit and washed it with a bit of clean water. Then, he quickly consumed it in large bites. It really did deserve the name of a spiritual fruit born from nature. Even though its level couldn't really be considered high, it was still extremely delicious and, within a few bites, Ling Han had already finished eating it. He felt extremely dissatisfied, and really wanted to take out the other fruit and eat it too. He quickly suppressed this impulsive urge, and quietly waited for the medicinal effects to play out. In but a short moment, a powerful and intense medicinal effect was released, transforming into innumerable tiny particles, entering his bloodstream and spreading throughout his entire body. Ling Han circulated 5 elements heaven grade skill. The spirit base in his dantian gave out a shimmering light like a lotus flower of the Tao, guiding the medicinal effects to nourish every piece of flesh, every bone, and every vein in his body. His cultivation rate was already very fast to begin with. Before he had consumed the green spiritual fruit, he had already reached the middle period of the 7th layer. Now that he had obtained the support of the spiritual fruit, his progression rate was naturally even more terrifying. The late period of the 7th layer of the body refining tier, the peak of the 7th layer of body refining tier. He accumulated some origin power and, in one breath, broke through to the 8th layer of body refining tier. At this time, the medicinal effects of the green spiritual fruit had not been completely exhausted yet, and were still continuously improving his cultivation. They were finally exhausted once Ling Han made it to the middle period of the 8th layer of body refining tier. Very good. It saved me about 6 days worth of time. Watching all this, a strange thought rose up in Lu Yutong's heart. It was the first time that she had not been shocked by the quick ascent of Ling Han's cultivation level. After all, this time should be considered normal, as he had eaten a green spiritual fruit. The two of them continued journeying around the mountain. Ling Han continued to refine his sword skills, hoping to achieve 3 flashes of sword chi before he broke through to the element gathering tier. After another 8 days, Ling Han had reached the peak of the 8th layer of body refining tier. After storing up 1 night's worth of origin power, he began the process of breaking through to the 9th layer of body refining tier. By the time morning came and the sun had risen, he stood up, the corners of his lips lifting slightly upwards in a smile. The 9th layer of body refining tier. Very good. I need around another 10 days' time and I will reach the peak of the 9th layer of body refining tier. At that time, I will consume the 2nd green spiritual fruit, and in one breath break through to the element gathering tier. Lu Yutong was naturally already numbed. Should Ling Han be able to break through to the element gathering tier on the morrow, she might very well not feel surprised. Otherwise, if she still became shocked every time this guy did something surprising, she really might die an early death. 10 days passed very quickly and Ling Han, as per his expectations, had already reached the peak of the 9th layer of body refining tier. He took out the 2nd green spiritual fruit, and smiled, saying, "Today is my last day in body refining tier. AI, it really has been a very long time." Lu Yutong could not help rolling her eyes in response. She had been by Ling Han's side since the time when he was only in the 2nd layer of body refining tier. How many days had it been? Just 1 month. This was a very long time he was talking of. But when she recalled how Ling Han had been stagnant for a number of years in the 2nd layer of body refining tier previously, his rueful feeling could be considered quite logical. She started cultivation when she was 13, and achieved the element gathering tier when she was 14. This point alone did make it seem that her cultivation progress had been much faster when compared with Ling Han's. After Ling Han swallowed the green spiritual fruit, he started to break through to the element gathering tier. He did not rush it. Instead, he only started to gather the medicinal effects within his body. Usually, when a martial artist began the process of breaking through, even if they had the support of medicinal effects, they had to batter against the barrier repeatedly until it had somewhat loosened to be able to breach it. However, Ling Han had absolute confidence that as long as he had stored up enough energy, he'd be able to successfully break through this barrier on his first attempt. Half an hour later, his body was brimming with origin power, and he felt as if his whole body was inflated. This was of course but a misconception. It was just that he had stored too much energy within his body, causing him to have this kind of an inflated feeling. But should he still not break through or unleash this energy somehow, his body really might explode because of this accumulation of energy. It was like a water pouch that had already been filled to the brim. If the pouch was not punctured to make a hole to release some water, or if the water wasn't transferred to a bigger pouch, then the only result would be that the pouch would explode. It's about enough, Ling Han thought. Now all that's left is to guide this boundless energy towards the Dantian and batter against the barrier. Body refining tear meant to store origin power in every bit of blood and flesh, and so it was actually very limited in quantity. As for element gathering tear, it meant to open up one's Dantian, and form a strange space within one's body. Everyone possessed this kind of a small universe, or a small world, in their bodies. In terms of martial arts, this kind of small world was thought to exist within one's Dantian. Hong. Under the fierce barrage of energy, a slit-like hole appeared in his Dantian. For anyone else to break through, they would have to depend on a continuous, repeated barrage to endlessly widen and enlarge this hole or slit. However, Ling Han was different. The energy he had accumulated was more than enough for him to immediately begin breaking through. Opening up the Dantian was only the first step. The next step was the most important one. That was, to solidify the origin power into a high-speed revolving nucleus. This was something like installing a motor in one's Dantian. With a mental command, the origin nucleus revolving at high speeds would generate energy that would erupt with a horrifying attack. How was it that the element-gathering tear could easily crush the body-refining tear? That was because once the origin nucleus was formed, energy would gush out like a flood from it. Even if two fighters had accumulated equal amounts of origin power, the one who had actually formed the origin nucleus would have faster, stronger attacks, possessing an overwhelming advantage over his opponent. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 33. 5 Elements Origin Nucleus. Ling Han's opening up his Dantian could only be considered as being halfway to element-gathering tear. He had only raised the upper limit of his internal storage of origin power. The power upgrade depended on whether he could form the origin nucleus or not. The number of those in the 9th layer of body refining tear who had been stuck on this step is unknown, but definitely very big. Martial artists of the element gathering tear could form a total of 9 origin nuclei. Once they had succeeded in forming the 9th, they'd be able to start the process of breaking through to the gushing spring tear. However, for Ling Han, forming an origin nucleus was only a small issue. After all, he had already done it 9 times in his last life. He started to form the nucleus. The powerful origin power stirred, gathered, intertwined and melded together. He was very familiar with this process and, very quickly, the origin power within his body solidified into a nucleus form, as tiny as a hair's breadth. But he immediately experienced a great shock, for within his Dantian, there actually appeared 5 origin nuclei. How was this possible? He had only just broken through to element-gathering tear, and now he had already reached the 5th layer of element-gathering tear. No. This was an impossible thing, because these 5 origin nuclei were much too small, and were still very far from reaching their pinnacle. He had never heard that anyone had ever managed to form 5 origin nuclei in one go and simultaneously expand them to their pinnacle form. Additionally, the gaps between these 5 origin nuclei was much too small. They had a mutual attraction and repulsion relationship, forming a subtle balance. They were also differently colored gold, green, white, red and black, respectively. Ling Han's heart skipped a beat. These were the solid forms of the 5 different elemental alignments. These 5 nuclei represented gold, wood, water, fire and earth, respectively. Could it be that a spirit base with multiple elemental alignments could form multiple origin nuclei? But how was it possible that he had never heard of such a thing in his last life? That's not right. Ling Han carefully examined them and concluded that these 5 different origin nuclei had achieved a perfect balance. Should any of these 5 nuclei be even a little bit stronger, it would destroy that delicate balance. Thus, there would only be one origin nucleus, the strongest, that could survive, in the end, while the other origin nuclei would be pushed aside and shatter. Following this line of deduction, for someone to be able to form 2, 3, 4, or the maximum of 5 origin nuclei, the elemental alignments of their spirit base had to achieve a perfect balance. This would allow the origin nuclei that had been formed to also be perfectly balanced with one another, none of which would be able to swallow the others and vice versa. There were many in this world who possessed 2 elemental alignments, or even 3 or 4. But those who had multiple elemental alignments and actually managed to achieve a perfectly balanced relationship between the multiple elemental alignments in his spirit base were few and far between. Thus, it was a pitiful few that could actually possess 2 or 3 origin nuclei. In his last life, besides burying himself in alchemy, Ling Han had also buried himself in cultivation. He took part in very few actual battles, and so not coming into contact with martial artists that had multiple origin nuclei was nothing strange. Moreover, multiple origin nuclei could become anyone's hidden trump card to turn over the tables and obtain victory, and who would reveal their trump card easily. The 5 origin nuclei would combine together to form a large origin nucleus, which means that I will have origin power 5 times stronger than anyone else. Ling Han thought. This was something very terrifying. For a martial artist to completely exhaust the origin power within his body, they'd need at least 100+ moves, or even 1000+ moves. But should he be able to discharge this energy at 5 times the speed? This would mean that the power of every attack would be increased by 5 times. If the power of element gathering tier was shown with numbers, the first layer would be 1, then the second layer would be 2, and the third layer would be 3, but the fourth layer would be 6. There would be a leap after every 3 layers, separating the entire tier into the 3 major stages, early, middle and late, respectively. With this kind of representation, the advantage of 5 elements origin nuclei was obviously without compare. No. The 5-element origin nuclei have also achieved a perfect balance as they are mutually interdependent, thus the power they can generate would definitely not be just 5, but 6 times, or even 10 times stronger. Should I reach the peak of the first layer of element gathering tier, I'd at least be able to fight on equal footing with someone in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. How much power would I actually have? I'll have to reach the peak of the first layer of element gathering tier to find out. So this was the true power of an immortal grade spirit base. However, to simultaneously expand and strengthen 5 origin nuclei would definitely be much slower than expanding just 1, so the advantage of cultivation speed of an immortal grade spirit base was thus evened out. Moreover, to be able to discharge origin power at 5 times the speed would require for the space within his dantian to be simply colossal. Otherwise, he would only have the opportunity to make a few moves before exhausting all of the energy stored in his body, so how could he continue to play like this? Never mind if there's no advantage of fast cultivation speed. After all, I would obtain power that would make me practically invincible amongst all those within the same cultivation level in exchange for it. Moreover, I am the Alchemy Emperor, so I'll still be able to maintain a high speed of cultivation and progress through the tiers. Even if I can only reach Heaven tier by 200 years old again, that'd still be the fastest record in history. No. I already have a complete understanding and comprehension of the different tiers, so I definitely would not need as long as 200 years to break through to Heaven tier. The world is fair. To be able to obtain stronger power, one must make twice, or even 10 times the sacrifice. Moreover, the space within my dantian is still too small, so I still do not have the ability to battle for too long. According to my understanding, only those spirit bases that have multiple elemental alignments that are also perfectly balanced can be labeled as an immortal grade spirit base. However, immortal grade spirit bases can also be separated into various categories, and my 5 elements mix Chaos Lotus is the strongest. That's because there cannot be a spirit base with 6 elemental alignments in this world, as it would then be impossible to achieve a balance between the various elemental alignments. No wonder I had a strange feeling when I previously read the second layer of this 5 elements heaven grade skill. I had initially thought that the creator of this skill arts had made some kind of a mistake, but now it seems that this is because the 5 elements mix Chaos Lotus is able to form 5 elements origin nuclei. If it's the simultaneous circulation of the 5 origin nuclei, there are no problems with this skill arts. So, it seems that an immortal grade spirit base definitely needs a specific kind of skill arts to be able to release its full prowess. Otherwise, if I were to use an ordinary skill arts to stimulate the 5 elements origin nuclei, I really have no idea what would happen. It seems that in this life, all my conditions are the best. If I still can't shatter the void and become a god with all those advantages, then I really should find a piece of tofu and knock myself to death with it. Taking advantage of the fact that the medicinal effects have not been completely exhausted, I'll cultivate for a while longer. Ling Han guided the remnants of the medicinal effects from the green spiritual fruit to expand his dantian and strengthen his origin nuclei. The cultivation process of element gathering tier was to expand one's dantian and strengthen the origin nucleus as much as possible. The larger the dantian, the more origin power it could store and accumulate. Meanwhile, the larger the origin nucleus and the faster its rotation, the stronger the power that could instantly erupt from it would be. Thus, even if 2 martial artists possessed the same cultivation levels, there would still appear a large gap between their individual battle prowess. Of course, the number of origin nuclei also had to be taken into consideration now. Ling Han was like an excavator, enlarging his dantian to enable it to store even more origin power and stimulating the rotation of his origin nuclei at the same time. With every rotation, the speed would increase by just a little bit more, and as strands of origin power twined around the origin nuclei would also become larger in size. He had to be very cautious when strengthening the origin nuclei in his dantian, because there needed to be an absolute balance amongst the 5 origin nuclei. Otherwise, if there was even the slightest bit of difference, this balance would collapse. The earlier the stage, the more there could not be any minuscule bit of difference, for the foundation was still much too weak. Because of his thirst for power, Ling Han diligently continued to cultivate with utmost concentration. While he had been energetically excavating, he suddenly stopped, and an inconceivable expression appeared on his face. A black tower was drifting within his dantian, exuding a golden light that stirred slightly. It gave off a desolate, primitive air, ancient and dignified. There were 9 levels in this tower, and from the angle of Ling Han's mind's sight, this black tower had a height of 10,000 meters, connecting the heavens and the earth. Even though it had already been 10,000 years, Ling Han could still identify this black tower with one glance. In his words, even if this tower had been burnt to ashes, he'd still be able to identify it. Because this black tower was the culprit that had killed him in his last life. Curses! How could this tower be inside his dantian? Could it be that killing him once in his last life was not enough, so it had chased after him to this second life, planning to kill him a second time? You can't play the game like that. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 34. Reappearance of the Black Tower. In his last life, after overcoming many dangerous obstacles, Ling Han finally entered the Black Light Ground Valley, whereupon he discovered a mysterious black tower. There was a golden script engraved on the walls of the tower, which was the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. That had been Ling Han's biggest opportunity, yet it was also the largest crisis in his last life. With a shake of the Black Tower, his physical body was directly shattered into ashes for some reason. His soul had survived and passed through 10,000 years into the current time period. Now looking upon this Black Tower, even with his strong mentality of a warrior of heaven tier, he still could not help but feel scared for a moment. In his last life, this Black Tower had only shook a little, and he was shattered into ashes. Now that it had reappeared within his body, how could this not be terrifying? However, Ling Han very quickly regained his composure. If the Black Tower intended to kill him a second time, then it could have done so long ago. Although he had only just discovered the existence of the Black Tower within his dantian, this thing should have actually been there for a very long time. And now that he thought about it carefully, this might clear away some of the confusion that he had. For example, why was it that his soul had existed for about 10,000 years? It must have been because of the Black Tower. The reason for his sudden rebirth must also be related to the Black Tower using some kind of unknown method to allow him to be reborn. The Black Tower also conveniently followed him into this new life. Brother, should I thank you, or hate you? Ha, Ling Han murmured. Because of the Black Tower, his last life was ended prematurely, but to be honest, Even if he had not been shattered to death by the Black Tower, with a short 1,000 years' time, how would he be able to learn the indestructible Heaven Scroll? It was completely impossible. Because even when he had neither eaten nor slept, spending all his time on his studies of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, he still needed to spend 10,000 years' time. If it was under normal conditions, how would he be able to accomplish that? Now, he even had a feeling that the Black Tower had actually shattered him into ashes to help him and allow him to comprehend the indestructible Heaven Scroll in soul form. Thus he was reborn the moment he had finally grasped the Heaven Scroll's first layer. Otherwise, how could there be such a huge coincidence in this world? The Black Tower, as it had been in the past, still possessed 9 floors, and aside from the lowest floor having a tightly closed door, the other floors were all completely sealed, without a single window or any other entrance. Even with Ling Han's sight, he still could not identify the material used to construct this Black Tower. All he could sense from it was an icy, weathered, ancient air. Additionally, Ling Han had never heard that the Dantian could accommodate anything else other than origin power. This Black Tower was definitely not of this world. There was a 99% chance that the Black Tower originated from the divine plane, and so did the indestructible Heaven Scroll engraved on its walls. A cultivation technique that required 10,000 years to be comprehended naturally could not possibly belong to this mortal plane either. Ling Han wanted to use his consciousness to enter the Black Tower, but discovered it was impossible. Even if consciousness was a power without form, and thus should be able to find its way anywhere, there was not even a small pinhole in this Black Tower through which his mental consciousness could enter. He wanted to force his way through the door, but when he directed his mental consciousness to rush towards the door, it was immediately rebounded back. Fine. This was a master. In his last life, it erased his existence with a casual tremor, and now, its overbearing presence was occupying his Dantian while he not only couldn't do anything to it, but also had completely no idea what kind of existence this Black Tower actually was. He was unwilling to give up, and once again commanded his consciousness to attack the Black Tower. No matter what, he had to find something out. After a few times of barraging his mental powers over and over against the tower, it seemed like the Black Tower had somewhat lost patience with him. It actually gave a slight tremor. There was finally a reaction, and a flash of consciousness was transmitted out by the Black Tower. This exceeded the level of simple language, and allowed Ling Han to directly understand its meaning. The general idea transmitted by the Black Tower was, the current you is still too weak, and cannot possibly enter the Black Tower. You'd have to at least break through to the gushing spring tier. But as the new master of the Black Tower, every time you progress to the next tier, you'll be able to obtain a single blessing from the Black Tower to directly raise your power by 1 tier. For example, as per Ling Han's current cultivation level of the early period of the first layer of element gathering tier, with the blessing of the Black Tower, he'd be able to display the power of someone in the first layer of gushing spring tier. However, it was only a one-time blessing. Even if he didn't use it, it'd be wasted, and couldn't be accumulated. Master. He had actually become the master of the Black Tower. However, this Black Tower really was a master. After all, if he was its master, why was it that he could not make use of it at all? Moreover, for every tier he ascended to, he could only get a one-time blessing from the Black Tower. Looks like he'd have to break through to the gushing spring tier to be able to find out more. Still, this could become his trump card to instantly raise his power by 1 tier. This trump card was more than enough to let him turn the tables in a moment of danger. But he could only use this kind of trump card once every time he ascended to the next tier. The tower was really much too stingy. Ling Han could not help exhaling a sigh before opening his eyes, looking very sullen. Lu Yutong almost felt like crying at this. You managed to break through to the element gathering tier in 1 day, and yet you still look so disappointed. How could this be endured by others? Come on, let's go home. Ling Han gave a snap of his fingers. This was the first time he had experienced the warmth of a father's love, and now that he has been away from home for close to a month, he felt a bit homesick. The two of them then began their journey home. On the way, Ling Han went through the second layer of cultivation techniques of the 5 elements heaven-grade skill inside his head. With his high perception, naturally he experienced no trouble and fully grasped every little detail of the second layer. There were 9 layers in total in the 5 elements heaven grade skill, corresponding with a martial artist's cultivation level from body refining tier all the way to heaven tier. Every breakthrough would mean that there should be a change to the corresponding cultivation technique suited to that cultivation level. N. As in, he has to cultivate in the next layer whenever he reaches the next tier. Element gathering tier was indeed something else. Origin power gushed out from his dantian. The amount was at least 10 times that of the 9th layer of body refining tier. Origin power continuously flooded out from his dantian as if there was no end to it. When they had departed, they had spent about less than half a day's time to arrive at their destination, but their return journey only lasted about an hour. Very soon, Grey Cloud Town appeared in front of their eyes. Greetings, young Master Han. Greetings, young Master Han. From the moment they stepped into the Ling clan residence, all servants and guards greeted Ling Han respectfully. Everyone now knew that Ling Han had defeated the Cheng brothers, and thus naturally would not dare to be disrespectful to this young master previously well known as trash anymore. After asking around, Ling Han found out that his father was currently inside his study, and quickly ran there. Ling Dongxing had said before that as long as he managed to break through to the element gathering tier, he would tell him what had happened to his mother. He entered the yard, and soon arrived at the door to the study. The door was ajar, and he gave a soft cough before entering, and said, "Father, I've returned." "Ha ha, you returned just in time. Tonight, the Cheng clan is hosting a banquet, and your name is also on the invitation." Ling Dongxing gave a hearty laugh, raising his head to look at Ling Han while holding out an invitation. Ling Han took the invitation, scanned through it, then said with a smile, "The Cheng clan can't hold on any longer." Ling Dongxing had long started his counterattack against the Cheng clan. When Ma Da Jun cut off the supply of alchemical medicine to the Cheng clan was like a normal human being who had lost a leg. Their every step was a trial. Additionally, the Ling clan was also attacking the other business ventures of the Cheng clan, paying a high price to purchase the medicinal ingredients that were supposed to be sold to the Cheng clan and selling them at low prices. In this manner, the finances of the Cheng clan were completely paralyzed, just as how the finances of the Ling clan had been. 20+ days of this, and the Cheng clan was now trapped in a big dilemma. At this time, the Cheng clan actually sent him an invitation to a banquet they were hosting. This was most likely a plea for mercy. "Later, the 2 of us will attend the banquet. But be careful, and don't run around at the banquet. I'm worried that the Cheng clan may be desperate enough to set up a trap," Ling Dongxing said. He would, of course, not brave the danger alone. The elite members of the clan would also be attending along him to act as a deterrence in case the Cheng clan was thinking of committing violence. Ling Dongxing looked at Ling Han, slightly frowning. He felt as if something was not right, but exactly what that something was, he could not think of. Pa. After half a moment, he suddenly smacked the table, and jumped up from his seat, his whole face filled with excitement, and said, "Hannah, you've broken through to element gathering tier." He finally discovered what that weird feeling he had was. Ling Han nodded, and said with a smile, "I have." Good. Ling Dongxing looked very excited, his hands clenched into fists. Because he had exerted too much strength into it, the bones in his fingers made a grinding sound, and the veins on his hands were protruding. "Father, I want to know about Mother," Ling Han said deeply. Ling Dongxing was hesitant for a while, before nodding his head and saying, "The current you does have the right to know. I had originally thought that the matter about your mother would be hidden in my heart for the rest of my life. I've hidden it for too long, so long that my heart is also very bitter." Ling Han nodded lightly. All these years, Ling Dongxing had borne the pain of losing his beloved wife alone. There was no one to comfort him, nor was there anyone to shoulder this pain with him, so he naturally suffered a lot. Ling Han swore in his heart that no matter who it was that had forced his parents to separate, he would ensure that this culprit would pay the price for this crime. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 35. Ao Feng. Years ago, I too was considered to be one of the geniuses of Rain Country. I was in the prime of my youth, filled with longing for the outside world. After I broke through to the element gathering tier, I left my home to find my own way in the world. 18 years ago, I was searching for an antique relic in Dark Demon Forest when I accidentally encountered your mother. As Ling Dongxing thought back to his past, his steadfast face could not help revealing a sliver of tenderness, especially when he started to speak of Ling Han's mother. Your mother's name is Yue Hongchang. She was a very beautiful and very gentle woman. Ling Dongxing spoke in a murmur, and his gaze became extremely gentle. However, the first time we met, we had a slight misunderstanding and ended up fighting with each other. After that, we started journeying together and built up a strong, deep affection for one another. When your mother was pregnant with you, we decided to return to Grey Cloud Town, and at that moment, I found out that your mother came from a remarkable background. She was the great-granddaughter of the third elder of Winter Moon Sect. The sect master of Winter Moon Sect was a powerful warrior of the pinnacle of spiritual infant tier. The elders were all in the spiritual infant tier as well. Should any one of them appear, they would be able to easily obliterate our reign country. Your mother's elders intended to marry her off to the descendant of another elder of the sect, a man named Ao Feng. He was extremely talented in martial arts, so talented that his talent could be claimed to be in defiance of the natural order. However, he was a philandering character. There were hundreds of women around him, and he even had many sons and daughters born out of wedlock. Your mother naturally did not wish to marry such a man, so she left home to get away from her worries, after which she met me, got to know me, and entered into a relationship with me. But eventually, the Winter Moon Sect still discovered your mother's relationship with me and dispatched elite warriors to capture us. We kept fleeing, and a short while after you were born, your mother's older brother, Yue Zhenshan, and Ao Feng managed to catch up to us. I will never forget what Ao Feng did to me at that time. He broke all my fingers one by one in order to force me to say traitorous words about your mother. However, he was disappointed. Even if I die, how could I ever do anything to hurt Hong Chang? Your mother threatened them by saying that she would end her own life, and with that, managed to guarantee the safety of us father and son, but my spirit base was crippled by Ao Feng. At first, I was of a mind to storm to the Winter Moon Sect and battle to the death, but for your sake, I decided to live out a contemptible life, and so returned to Grey Cloud Town. Ling Han suddenly understood. No wonder Ling Dongxing could easily enter and leave the purple light ground valley which even elite warriors from Huyang Academy did not manage to enter. His mother must have left some kind of secret treasure with his father that could ensure his survival years ago. Spiritual infant tier. Ling Han lightly frowned. It looks like he would not be able to retrieve his mother in the short term. There were 10 tiers in martial arts, and the spiritual infant tier was the 7th tier. Meanwhile, he had only just stepped onto the 2nd tier, so no matter how he looked at it, it'd take him about 10, 20 years or even more before he managed to achieve the 7th tier. And this was still what he, with his comprehension of the tiers up to heaven tier, an immortal grade spirit base, a heaven grade cultivation technique in the support of his knowledge as the Alchemy Emperor, could achieve. If it was any other genius, even if they managed to enter the spiritual infant tier within their lifetime, it would still be something that could only be possible after at least 200 or 300 years' time. He had to make full use of his time. That's because there was a limit to the lifespan of a martial artist. If a martial artist did not break through to the flower blossom tier, they would enjoy a lifespan no longer than that of a mortal. At best, he would have no pains or illnesses and manage to survive to 100 years old. But should he be able to break through to flower blossom tier, then he'd be able to gain an extra 200 years of lifespan, and breaking through to every subsequent tier would reward the marshal with another additional 200 years of lifespan. Ao Feng. Flames of rage burned strongly in Ling Han's eyes. Although Ling Dongxing had played down what he experienced, Ling Han could imagine how much his father had suffered in the hands of Ao Feng on that day, and how much humiliation he had gone through for all his dignity to be lost. If it was not for his sake, Ling Dongxing would definitely have stormed the Winter Moon Sect. At worst, he would die. An insult to the father was the same as insulting the son. Ling Han had already sentenced Ao Feng to death penalty within his heart. However, as Ao Feng was a disciple of the Winter Moon Sect, and was even labeled a genius existence, what would his current cultivation level be? Spiritual ocean, spiritual pedestal, flower blossom. Hannah, although you are very talented, the Winter Moon Sect is still a colossal existence to the two of us. You must not act impulsively. Otherwise, I really will not be able to face your mother anymore. Ling Dongxing said after regaining his composure. Ling Han nodded, and said, Please don't worry, father. I will definitely not act impulsively. All my hopes are now on your shoulders. You are not only living for the sake of yourself, but also for the sake of your mother. Ling Dongxing said deeply. I understand. Right, now that you have broken through to the element gathering tier, you can participate in the Da Yuan tournament. Ling Dongxing said, changing the subject. Da Yuan tournament. Ling Han searched through the memories in his head, and discovered that he did not have any relevant memories regarding this tournament. Ling Dongxing smiled, and said, You had never shown such talent in the field of martial arts before, and so I never spoke of it to you. This Da Yuan tournament is a martial arts tournament organized by the Da Yuan King's Mansion. It takes place once every 3 years. The requirements for the participants are below 30 years old, cultivation level under Gushing Spring tier, and being a martial artist that belongs within the sphere of control of Da Yuan City. In Rain Country, cities were the largest administrative area, and there were 36 great cities all over the country. Every city was responsible for an expansive area. Da Yuan City was one of these 36 cities, and the one in charge of this city was called the Da Yuan King. He was also a descendant of the founding emperor of Rain Country, as the title of Da Yuan City's lord and Da Yuan King was passed down through the generations. Under the control of the Da Yuan King's Mansion were 4 great powers, which were in charge of their own respective barren areas aside from Da Yuan City itself. Stone Wolf Sect was one of them. What kind of reward will the champion get? Ling Han asked. Ling Dongxing could not help feeling a little scorn. His son was really quite ambitious to immediately and directly aim for the position of champion. However, this was his excellent son. He thought for a while, and said, It's apparently some kind of spiritual medicine called dark moon grass. It's the chief ingredient for concocting purple origin pill, which can help a martial artist in the element gathering tier easily break through to the gushing spring tier. Ling Han was immediately flabbergasted. The alchemists now, were they all idiots? Dark moon grass is of such high value, how could it be used to concoct a yellow-grade high-level pill? It was the chief ingredient for concocting the spatial pill. The spatial pill could help expand the space within the dantian of a martial artist, and this was something even elite warriors of heaven tier would be deeply jealous of. Such a natural spiritual medicine naturally could let a martial artist in the element gathering tier break through easily and successfully to the gushing spring tier. Its grade was so high that it'd be strange if it did not have this kind of effect. But how wasteful was that? The chief ingredient of purple origin pill could be easily replaced with a lower grade medicinal ingredient. 10,000 years had passed. Could it be that there was not even the slightest bit of improvement to alchemy, and alchemy had degraded instead? Ling Han broke out in a smile. He could not allow such a precious spiritual medicine to be wasted, so he could only take the dark moon grass. Moreover, his 5 elements origin nuclei expended too much origin power at too fast a pace, and he was just worrying about the limited space within his dantian. And here, the solution came knocking on his door. Still, it was already the end of October now, and there were only about 2 months left before the end of the year, so it did seem to be a bit pressing. Looks like he would have to make a trip to the 7 Wind Mountains, as the inner core of the red-scaled dragon snake could be used to concoct the transcending origin pill. A transcending origin pill would allow the cultivation level of a martial artist in the element gathering tier to forcibly increase by 1 layer, but it was only effective for martial artists in the early stage of element gathering tier. For Ling Han, if he wanted to reach the middle stage of element gathering tier before the year's end, then the transcending origin pill was his only option. However, the red-scaled dragon snake was extraordinarily powerful and its whole body was strongly poisonous, thus Ling Han needed to make full preparations for this trip. Otherwise, it would be the same as throwing away his life.